Welcome to my newest video series on Mage Knight the board game. In this series I'm going to run through a solo conquest scenario as by the book as I can manage using a dummy player. Before getting started on the actual playthrough, however, I wanted to make this short video detailing what it is exactly that I'm trying to accomplish and who my expected audience might be, so that you can find out more quickly whether watching this series is going to be worth your time. So, what are my goals here? Well, briefly put, I really have two main aims. The first aim is to demonstrate how the game is played for those who might be new to the game. Not necessarily brand new. In fact, it might be hard to follow along if you're totally uninitiated. But new-ish, learning the game, maybe having looked at the rule books or seen a bit of another video somewhere here or there. Have at least some context with which to follow along. And as such, I'll give a bit of an overview at the start of the first full video in the series, and I'll be pausing throughout as we go to explain rules elements as they come up. The second aim is to discuss some strategy as I go. So I will not just be discussing how the points add up and how playing X and Y cards at this time will get me enough movement to get up on top of a hill or whatever. But I will also be discussing in real time my decision-making process. Why is it that I'm going up that hill in the first place, as opposed to moving around it or bopping over into this swamp over here instead? I, of course, have some ancillary goals as well of maybe hoping to entertain you and certainly entertain myself as I go. But really my primary hope here is to lend some clarity to your understanding of the game in respect to both rules and strategy, with the understanding that you might feel a little bit of noviceness hanging about you. That said, I do not pretend to be any kind of a master at this game. I am sure as I go along that I'm going to make some mistakes here or there, maybe fail to see a better play that was on the table, etc. But just so long as I don't violate too many rules, nothing too egregious, and make at least a modicum of sense in explaining my rationale for doing whatever it is that I'm doing at the time, then this should help some folks to understand what sorts of considerations go into being at least minimally successful in this game. As far as my bona fides go, I don't have any idea what my overall track record is in this game or how it stacks up to other players. I don't know if I would be considered as somebody who tends to rack up good scores. I know I went a long time, what seemed to me far too long, before breaking 200 for the first time. So I'm sure that there are Mage Knight players out there who would absolutely clean my clock in any kind of a competition. Just take me to the woodshed. What I can say, however, is that I generally do have a pretty high success rate regarding the victory conditions in this scenario. I generally go into a solo conquest game feeling 90-95% confident that I'm not only going to conquer both cities, but wind up with a decent score of somewhere between maybe 170 and 210 in that area. It pretty much always happens that way, so I think I should be able to speak with at least a little bit of wisdom to offer those who are new or maybe looking to improve at the game. Which leads me to the last couple of points I want to make about this series. Who is the intended audience? And by extension, what can you expect to see? As I've said, I am going to be beginning with a short overview, laying the groundwork for the first round of the game. And I'll be recording this all one round per video. So you can expect to see 6 videos after this one in the series, each detailing one round of the 6 total in the solo conquest game. As these rounds get more involved and longer, the videos will probably run a little longer as you go. Mage Knight, has to be said, is not a quick game. First of all, right from the get-go, it's really just not a fast-paced game. When you then, on top of that, pause to explain why you're doing everything the way that you're doing it, it tends to slow down even more. Hopefully you'll be interested enough in the decision-making process that I'm going on about for that discussion there at that time to be interesting enough for you to be worth watching. But this is not going to be the most dynamic television you've ever laid your eyes on, it has to be said. Okay, it's an in-depth look at a careful playthrough of an involved and highly tactical game with a lot of brain-burning decision-making going on. I'm going to be going through in detail what all my options are as I see them and why the one I'm picking is, in my mind at that time, the best one for me. I'm going to not, however, take like a half hour to explain how movement works and how I'm going to move on to this bit of terrain or that bit of terrain. Nobody wants to watch that video, and I don't really want to record it. So I'm going to assume that the audience has some minimal facility with the rules as they are. When I explain rules, it will generally be with a mind towards reinforcing perhaps an initial read of the rule book, or maybe stressing a rule that I think is easy to forget, that maybe I've forgotten, or I've heard people or read people online say that they forget. I will speak to elements of combat and card play, but I will essentially be assuming that somebody watching this is already at least roughly familiar with the rules of combat. I don't necessarily expect you to have seen, much less memorized, my series on combat in this game, which is going to be linked in the description, by the way. But as I have already done that in-depth look at combat, I'm not going to replicate that here. So I will not be walking you through combat in any more exhaustive detail, mechanically speaking. I'll note an important rule here or there and discuss what is going into my decision making in order to try maybe to kill this unit with range, or maybe in another scenario why range isn't an option for me at that time. I will not be discussing, except accidentally or via those sorts of contextual clues, maybe the differences between fortification and double fortification and the like. I will be stressing elements in a bit more detail than that have not been covered in my combat videos. So if there's exploration rules, revealing of enemies rules, I'm going to note them because I haven't talked about them at this point really to date. I'm going to get into a little bit about how certain adventure sites work as they come up. And I'll talk kind of strategically about what's nice about taking a mage tower or a keep. The end result should be that someone who has read the rules, maybe played the first recon tutorial scenario, has seen my combat videos, some subset of these, and then watches this playthrough, that person should have not only a solid grasp, fairly solid, of how to play the game, mechanically speaking, but they should also have a pretty good sense of how to approach the questions about pace and resource management that are part of playing this game in order to have a better shot at getting that first, often elusive, conquest victory. I will be playing all this out, as you may have guessed from the backdrops here, using the scripted mod from Tabletop Simulator created by users Tragic and Cryptotia. You can find this on Steam for the PC, and I had nothing, once again, to do with putting any of it together. It's just out there, it's available. I do own the game, and I don't use this to play with anybody and allow them to play the game if they don't own it. I use this simply because it allows me a save state and because it allows me to film at a higher level than I would be able to produce with shaky cam. So that's pretty much my rationale for recording this as a screen capture rather than trying to play at a table with the actual game components and trying to zoom and focus with a handy cam. I will be, as we go forward, incorporating elements from the Lost Legion expansion. So you may find that as I go, there are some game components. If you do not have that expansion, there may be components with which you are not familiar. I think that if you're in a position to be able to follow along with the videos in general, then these additional elements won't be too difficult. They're not going to throw you too much for a loop. and I just find that they make the game so much more compelling that I'm adding them in, and I'm going to roll with it. I'll try to state as they come up as often as possible when an element is from Lost Legion, so that you don't get too confused in the moment. But they will be there, so keep an eye out for it. At this point, I have recorded only the first couple of rounds of the playthrough, and they are going to be released shortly. I've got a couple of splicings to do, and some splash screens, intro, etc. to put together. But the first two are recorded and ready to go, with the remaining following along, of course, in due course. I'm off to a fair start so far, so I hope you will keep an eye out for these videos as they begin coming out, and let me know your thoughts on how I'm doing as I go. I'm sure, again, I will be making a poor choice here or there. I'm sure you're going to see something that I didn't see in real time, but I'm not scripting this ahead of time. I'm just playing it out, and we're going to kind of see how it goes. So that's kind of the nature of the beast. Nobody's perfect. Certainly I am not. But I hope I won't forget any rules. I'm trying to be very, very careful about the rules as I go, and we'll just have to wait and see how this particular bout of Conquest goes as we play through solo Conquest. Alright, that's it. Thank you for watching. The playthrough videos, again, are going to be linked in the description as they come out, so all you need to do is glance down there to find out what has been released to date. While you're down there, please like, share, and subscribe, and I will catch you in the first episode, day 1 of our solo Conquest playthrough. Please wish me good hunting, Mage Knights. Cheers.